This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, very good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome back. And yeah, so last session we were discussing about um, how do we kind of set up our application, end to end with Terraform, but we just kind of broke that particular end to end. Okay, why? Because so we are doing a lot of work around the shell scripting, and I don't want to do that because there is a better tool than that, which is so Ansible. And at the same time, so at the same time you need to understand, so there is a clear, not clear, I would say, there's a very small line drawn between, so which one to choose basically. So shell script, can't you do the job? Yes, you can do the job. Why can't you do the job? You can do the job, but also at the same time you have to take the liberty about, okay, so whether doing the right thing or not. Okay, you always has to think through that. Okay, whether you're doing the right thing or not. Okay, so doing the things all the time, anyone can do that. Okay, so but sometimes you have to, as a best practice of the work, what you have to do is sometimes you have to step back and stop what you're doing, think about, so whether you're doing the things, whether it is right or wrong. Okay, so the same scenario we are facing now, right? So we're facing something like, so we can go with the shell scripting and you can customize the shell scripting and the job is done. I mean, it's quite done. We can do with the shell scripting, that's fine. But at the same time, I'm taking the liberty so that, is the right thing for the long plan, okay, long run, whether the shell scripting is a good idea or a bad idea. So that's what I'm thinking about. Okay, and that's where then I started looking into the problems basically. Okay, and the problems would be, and the problems are going to be is, um, problems are going to be with the shell scripting is, let me show you that. Sorry. Yeah. So we did some code and we did some Git repository, which is fine. Yeah. So now here, so problems with the shell scripting. The problems we are going to face with the shell scripting is imperative versus declarative. Imperative versus declarative. So here, if you take a look here, the imperative versus declarative, you return a very big logic basically. I want to run a shell script, so which works across multiple operating systems. And what I'm doing, I'm checking the uname. So uname quite usually gives whether it is a Linux or some machine. If it's a Linux, I'm checking whether it is a Red Hat machine, if it's a Debian machine, if it's a SUSE machine, and inside that particular one also, you will go with whether this is the version, that is a version, so whether it is CentOS 6, CentOS 7, or CentOS 8 version, a lot of conditions comes into picture, and that becomes as imperative. Okay, so that approach is called as imperative. So declarative. Okay, declarative is quite simple. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to add a user at sample, right? If it comes to declarative approach, you're going to simply say that user sample. That's it. And that declarative will take care of, okay, so that declarative code has been written in such a way that in the backend, so whether it is, so any kind of operating system, it uses this appropriate statement in the backend and ensure that, so the user is added. You don't bother about that. You don't bother about that. So that's where the declarative approach is quite simple for the user to write the code. Now, instead of writing the very big logic like this, I'll simply say that user sample, and it will be done. Okay, that's a major problem. Imperative versus declarative. Imperative is going to kind of, even it is a very English word, right? Imperative versus declarative. Imperative versus declarative is a kind of a very simple meaning even, right? Uh, Meaning if you go there. So then what is imperative and actually meaning English, you should look into the English meaning basically. So imperative tells that, so hey, can you do this? Okay, can you do this, do that, do that, do that? Okay, and kind of, you give some instruction basically, right? So to a person or so to the system or whatever it is. Whereas the declarative is something like you do this. Okay, it's a commanding mode kind of thing. Okay, So you do this, and that should do that. Okay, so that kind of approach it is. Okay, so in the previous scenario, like imperative, it's kind of so it's a not that much demanding, and you say that do this, do that, do that. If do this, not do this. If not do this, something like that. Okay, so some kind of a logic out there. But whereas if it is a declarative, it's a straightforward command. You do this. Okay, and that will take care of how to do that. You don't bother about that. Okay, so that's basically is a major kind of problem with the shell scripting imperative approach. You return a long list of code which is really necessarily not needed at all. So shell scripting is not inevitable, I am telling you. Okay, you cannot avoid shell scripting at all. Okay, so small pieces of code, you don't actually bring big program for that. Okay, you do with the shell scripting, and shell scripting can decently do that. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, but yeah, at the same time, when you are dealing with the project level, so you should have a kind of a standard a tool to do that end-to-end work. So that's where some configuration management tools are available to deal with the operating system rather than the shell scripting. Okay, so that's where you're going with the other approaches. Now imperative versus declarative, that is the one, and the next one is homogeneous versus heterogeneous. So your shell scripting is homogeneous, whereas actually so you have tools which are heterogeneous. So that means your shell scripting will work only for one operating system for sure. And if you try to run it on the another operating system, there is no guarantee that it will work. But whereas declaratives approach, okay, it will work, no doubt. The tools will work, no issues. Okay, and whereas the very important thing when it comes to the performance, so shell scripting is always sequential. If it is this, do this. If it is this, do this. One by one, one by one, one by one. It takes a longer time. It takes a longer time. So whereas you have parallel operations, which is possible as well. So using the tools like Ansible and all, you can do some paralleling. Okay, so now let's say if you have 100 servers, you want to run a shell script on 100 servers, then you kind of write a loop to run on 100 servers. It go first server, and then second server, and then third server. But I want to take a batch of servers, like so 20 servers in one shot I want to upgrade. Okay, so parallel, then you don't have options. Okay, and another major important thing is if you want to run a shell script on the remote node, then the script has to be literally copied to the other node and you have to execute it. Okay, the script should be locally available on all the 100 systems where you're executing something, and that's kind of a little more operations work, I would say, so which is necessarily not really needed. So whereas the tools will help you in addressing these particular issues. And the tools which we're talking now about is configuration management tools. Okay, so configuration management is which is nothing but the tools which is going to deal with the configuration inside the machines. Okay, inside the operating systems, and inside that particular one, so you have different tools like so Chef, Puppet, SaltStack, and then Ansible you have, and definitely Ansible is a leader now. Currently Ansible is the leader. Okay, so we're going to talk about Ansible. And what is the Ansible is solving you? So the imperative replacing with declarative, right? And a simple declarative supports heterogeneous operating system as well. Okay, Ansible supports heterogeneous, and parallel operations are possible. Code need not to be on the server side. All the problems, whatever we talked about on the shell scripting side, the Ansible is trying to solve the problems, and hence we are actually trying to use this. Okay, so that's the idea about Ansible. Okay. All right, and so let's go and talk about Ansible. And if you look into the market, so Ansible is a new product out of all the configuration management tools which are available. So Ansible is the latest one, but yet it overtook the market. Okay, so if you want to see the real reports, basically you have RightScale reports. So RightScale 2016, even there should be reports before to that as well. I have something from history which is coming. So RightScale 2016 report, if you look into that, so if you look into the Ansible usage of there, so the Ansible usage, respondents of DevOps tools, respondents always will be little bit, little bit ahead than the enterprise. Let's look into the enterprise. Respondents using DevOps tools, enterprise respondents using DevOps tools. Let's look into the enterprise. In 2016, so the enterprise market, so that means companies, big market, is majorly using Puppet. Okay, Puppet as a major tool. That is a 2016 scenario. let me go with the 2017 scenario. What 2017, survey is telling, basically. So, and then search for Ansible. And here also, respondents looking, enterprise respondents. You forget about the Docker. Docker is really not actually fits in this area, but somehow they actually mentioned in here. But actually, if you look into the configuration management tools, so the Chef actually took a little bit lead in 2017, right? Than Puppet. Yes, that's true. That's true. So Chef took the become the leader actually. And so 2018, now 18 what happened? So 18 also, so something Chef was leading, if I'm not wrong, respondents. But I want to majorly look at the enterprise respondents. So 2018 also Chef is still in the leader in the market, and Puppet is followed, but Ansible is a little nearby. Okay, who actually so who is actually increasing all these years was Ansible, not these two. Okay, and then 2019. So then what happened is 2019. You don't have this, but yeah, to write still 2019 report. I have my local system downloaded, and here if I look into the Ansible, so configuration tools used, and even the enterprise. Did they give the enterprise way? No. Yeah, configuration tools used Ansible by enterprise. You look into this, Ansible become the leader. Okay, enterprise Ansible took the leadership actually, even in the organizations which is being used, and that's how the other configuration management tools are going down. Now, why? Okay, so what is the reasons? Okay, just try to understand. Okay, why Puppet and Chef was there for quite a long time? How come Ansible is actually overtaking the taking the lead? So you need to understand. You do some kind of market analysis, so then you'll understand that it's not about competition between Ansible, Chef, and Puppet. So the competition is between configuration management versus containerization. Okay, so people are moving to container world. If you go into the container world, there is no requirement of configuration management, right? So if you go into the container world, you don't require configuration. So it has its own declarative language like Dockerfile or something. So based on that, you build the images. That's it. Okay, you don't have an operating system, you don't have a configuration to manage, and if you have something, so that will be taken care by simple shell scripts. Okay, so but configuration management tool is necessarily not needed in configuration management tools is necessarily not needed to necessarily not needed to what we say kind of run the containers. Okay, so you have orchestration tools like Kubernetes or other platforms to do that. Okay, so that's where the enterprise market started immediately looking into that. There is no need of configuration management tool, but you cannot avoid the configuration management tool because end of the day some servers will be there, right? So that's where wherever it is needed, so people started using the Ansible rather than maintaining a big tools like someone unmuted.
अभी नहीं लगेगा
Venkat, are you talking to me? Venkat. Let me mute you. Yeah. So what I was talking, yeah, necessarily, so the configuration management tool is not really needed, and at the same time, you end of the day you cannot. End of the day you have to manage some servers, and those servers require some kind of patching or something like that. So then, yeah, Ansible you have as well, no doubt. Okay, so you can use that, no problem. And that's where Ansible become the leader. I'm telling you, while I was working in Oracle, where Ansible was not there at all. So we used to have Puppet, okay, so as one section, but we used to have another tool also called as Do It. Okay, so this Do It tool is much better than Ansible V1, Ansible version 1. Okay, But Ansible version 2 has been is a nice so taken the nice steps taken by Ansible. It becomes a very stable because Red Hat actually started supporting it and even acquired it actually. But yeah, until then it was not really great tool. Oracle internally has another tool. If Oracle would have been thought of configuration management something given to the outside world, they would have actually given that particular tool to the outside world. Okay, an internal tool. Okay, so with that tool, I used to maintain thousands of machines. Okay, thousands of machines. Okay, all those machines are close to 90,000 machines. So those machines will be managed by a single utility called as do it. It's a simple binary written on Perl language. Okay, so which was much powerful than Ansible V1, I would say. Okay, but Ansible V2 is a nice approach. Okay, so yeah, but whatever it is, okay. So the reasons were people has different approaches internally, so they try to do a lot of things. Big organizations, they have some kind of their own small utilities, build up for their own. But but Ansible become a very simple one, lightweight. Okay, so to kind of a sort of a you take Chef and Puppet, to kind of maintain an enterprise architecture for that. But Ansible is nothing. Okay, Ansible you don't want to maintain anything at all, so that makes a life really easy as well. Okay, so that's where so the Ansible is quite leading in the market. Okay, as simple as that to say.
Raghu, quick question.
Yeah,
Ansible's cost towards a Chef as compared to Chef. Any idea? I mean, I've not looked at them.
There is no cost involved, and all the configuration management tools are kind of an open source. Okay, so which is even a freeware, but you have limitations. Like you go with Puppet, I think you can run only 5 nodes for free. Okay, beyond that you need to pay the cost. So Chef was having some 20 nodes, if I'm not wrong, but it lost. Yeah, you know that it lost the competition in the market in 2019. So they have open sourced everything. So Chef, so Chef. Made open source. So there was only Chef, only one product was open source. The other products are not open source. So in sometime in 2019, so they know that they lost the market, so they're definitely gonna lose the market. Okay, so that's how they actually, kind of released every software under the Chef as open source. Okay, so kind of given as freeware as well. And Ansible from day one, it was with Red Hat, and it is always the open source and freeware. And yeah, so that's how it is. And if you want some support, you always has to go to the Red Hat and say that I want to purchase that, and I mean purchase support, and typically it is really not needed. Necessarily it is not needed, but so they have some product called as Tower. Okay, Ansible Tower. So if you want a UI for Ansible and you pay for that, basically that's the only idea. The payment actually goes here. But Ansible, okay, is embedded by each and every component of Red Hat, and that's where so they are using it for even to ship their other products. Basically, you necessarily need not to sell this particular tool. It's kind of a dependency tool they are actually giving for some other platforms like OpenStack, OpenShift, some other products that Red Hat is having. Okay, so that is fine. Yeah, but yeah, it is free, and Ansible itself is free. But if you want some UI and you want a better manager, you want some kind of a UI where you want to look some graphs, so what is happening, or you want to trigger the jobs over the UI, something like that, you have a product, and which is a paid product. Otherwise, Ansible itself, Ansible as a standalone Ansible, it's free. It's freeware. Yeah. Yeah. But now, now we cannot actually trust this Red Hat also, because Red Hat is being acquired by IBM, right? So they already killed the CentOS product. Now you will not get any more CentOS actually. Okay. So Red Hat now killed the CentOS. Okay, yes, it killed CentOS actually in December first week. Yeah, I think December 9th or sometime. So we got a news that so Red Hat just killed CentOS. So that means until now, so how it was going to be is Red Hat is an open source community. CentOS is a community, and sometime in 2015-16, the CentOS community is also being majorly funded by Red Hat under some terms and conditions, basically. Okay, so then CentOS is closely started working with Red Hat. Red Hat started closely. It's more like a it's a separate separate team of Red Hat. it became that way over the years. Now IBM acquired Red Hat, and now the legacy decisions, legal decisions, majorly taken by IBM now. Now IBM, so thrown a decision that we will not give any more CentOS upgrades. Even the initial contract for CentOS 8 version is to give a support of until 2029. Okay. Now all of a sudden they're saying that so the support for CentOS 8 version is also available only till end of December 2021 only. Okay. And now what is the change they brought up here actually is CentOS is really not getting killed, but the way of CentOS they killed it. Okay. So that means Red Hat as a product, which is released by Red Hat operating system. RHEL is a product, Red Hat Linux is a product which is released by Red Hat, and that particular source is always taken by the CentOS and kind of provide a stable version to the market, which is called as CentOS operating system. Now they change that order. Now actually what they're doing is they're putting CentOS as a stream for the development. So that means any development coming up is a development product, which is called development product of Red Hat is called as CentOS. Development product of Red Hat is called as CentOS, and they will release the final release as Red Hat. Okay, it's like a dev version now. Okay, and people are not really happy. Okay, so and again the same question to ask to me. So today it is open source. I don't know tomorrow what happens basically. Okay, so yeah, things are changing, but yeah, so no other options. It's like company's decision, right? Yeah. And yeah, so and also just a point came out. I want to tell something. There is like CentOS community. This literally seems to be some legal issues. Like CentOS community also cannot actually oppose that particular decision, and that's where this community started something else called as Rocky Linux. You see, these guys actually started something called as Rocky Linux, like a CentOS Linux, and they're taking the same Red Hat source now, because they cannot name it the CentOS because some legal terms. Okay, so that's where they started with some other name, taking the same Red Hat source again. Okay, and now started planning to give something called as Rocky Linux. So probably in a year or so, you will start seeing Rocky Linux is a new Linux, which is again a Red Hat, which is alternate to CentOS, because CentOS went to the development edition, not a production edition. Okay, Rocky Linux comes as a production edition in future. Okay, that's the idea. So yeah, so what do you mean? So it's downstream, so partner has shifted direction, something like, if you are interested, just read about this particular articles. Like this is the latest news, at least the last month news. So it shocked like a lot of people, because CentOS is widely used, and all of a sudden they're saying that so there are no support. Like a lot of people trying to be using from CentOS. Or they cannot use Red Hat because Red Hat is a paid version. So CentOS they cannot use it because it's a development edition. Okay, development edition means still it's capable, but still so there's always a question mark, right? So going with the stable version rather than the dev version, there's always a question mark in the market. Okay, whether to use or not to use, and that is where yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's unnecessary things. That's okay. Let's go back to the point. Hope I answered your question. And yeah, so Ansible is an open source for now, at least for today.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Good background.
Yeah. So today it's the thing, but tomorrow we don't know. And yeah, so fine. And when you come to the configuration management tools, we need to understand something here. So what something we need to understand here is, which it is pull versus push. Okay, how this configuration management is going to work. Okay, so we need to understand that. And so we have different tools out there, and the different tools has different approaches. And so different tools has different approaches. Different people think in a different way. So some people always say that push is a good mechanism, pull is a different mechanism. Okay, push is good, pull is good. There's always a debate there. Okay, so we don't want to get into there, but because we don't want to get in there at the same time. So it's a tool, whatever it says that you should be using it. All right, so you don't have separate scope in there. Right? So to decide what to want. And yeah, so it's a tool decision, and however the tool is there, you'll be using that. And in order to understand, so push and pull, let me just try to attach this. Let me put a small diagram. This. One second, I'm attaching it. Yeah. Now there is always a, so push and pull. Okay. So push and pull mechanisms were there. And what is the difference between them? Okay. How it differs, something like that. So now let's say you have some server, you have some kind of a server there. So you have some kind of CM server, whatever the tool it is, doesn't really matter. Okay. And you have some nodes which are actually running. Okay. Your node is your database node or your application node, your web server, doesn't really matter. There's some nodes actually which you actually going to manage them. Okay. Now this configuration management tool is actually going to push this. So the CM tool will always push the changes. Hey, use this. Okay, say use that. Okay, so you push the configuration and the node will run accordingly. Okay, so or you push to the node directly. And whereas you come to the pull is something like so you are going to have a node. So the same way, so you're having some CM server and you're having some nodes ultimately. Now, what is the mechanism here is this node come to the server and knock the CM server, hey, I came to you, I required the configuration, and CM server validate, okay, this node is a good, this node is an actual trusted node, or this good node is being maintained by me or not. It's gonna do some kind of validation, and if everything is fine, it just gives some configuration. So that's where the node is actually coming to the configuration management server and is actually kind of pulling its information from the CM server, and that becomes a pull mechanism. That becomes a pull mechanism. So both has its own advantages and disadvantages. Okay. Now, when it comes to the, when it comes to the, when it comes to the tools, so here you have something called as so Ansible using the push mechanism, whereas Chef and Puppet uses this particular mechanism. Okay, so Ansible uses push mechanism, whereas Chef and Puppet uses pull mechanism. And see, everything has its own advantages and disadvantages. Why to lose the advantages? So because push has certain advantages and has certain disadvantages because of pull. Okay, pull has its advantages and a certain disadvantages is there because of push. And that's where every configuration management tool gives an approach of push as a primary and pull also is there. Here pull as a primary and push is also there. Okay, and every good tool has it, and every tool is covering every option. So that's where there is no point in debating, and which you want to choose is your choice basically, right? So that's where Ansible supports both push and pull, and we'll try to see and we'll try to see both the things. Okay, so that's how. Okay, so we're going to learn push and pull both, and yeah, and so yeah, we mostly require pull mechanism. If you are following, okay, so you're having both mechanisms, like push you have and pull you have. Okay, so push is more if you follow mutable infrastructure. So you follow push mechanism. Mutable means always changes, right? So that means there is a node and it once brought up, you always push the changes, push the changes, push the changes. So that mutable. But are we taking the mutable approach? No, we are not taking the mutable approach. We're taking the immutable approach. When it comes to the immutable, it's always a pull mechanism. Okay. And we're actually trying to take this approach in the line of business, basically. In the line of technology approach we're taking is, okay, immutable infra. So that means what happens basically, whenever actually your AMI is making, it actually pulls the configuration. AMI is actually going to pull the pull the configuration for once, and I mean, you pull the Ansible and you run it, right? And you make the AMI. Okay, and that particular AMI is used by your auto scaling tool. Okay, that's it. And you never change this particular AMI anymore. Okay, if you want any change, so if you call it as AMI V1, and V2 will come into picture. Another V1, another AMI will come into picture. You don't never modify this AMI. So, but that's where we're actually going with immutability. When it go with the immutability, full is the only approach we are thinking. Or like, let's say if my approach is, so I never gonna modify the server. I don't follow this auto scaling group. I have 2 servers, and I always maintain. I'll have a load balancer. I'll always balance these 2 nodes only. Okay, so these 2 nodes are very standard, and I'll destroy them, and so I'll delete them or destroy them or something like that. Then I'll go for push mechanism, mutable. I'm under mutable. If it is mutable, then I'll push the configuration to this, right? So I will push the configuration. Yeah, there is a 2 nodes always remain same. I can go for a push approach. So now the approach which we are going to take is pull majorly, but we'll anyhow. To start with, we'll talk about push only. Okay, to start with, we'll talk about push, but yeah. But on the project level, our approach is pull. Why pull? This is the approach. Okay, so it's only kind of one time, so setup. So one time while the AMI is coming up, while you're making the AMI, you're running the shell script. If you remember the Terraform code, you're running the shell script. Okay, now you're going to run the Ansible pull code, where it pulls the code and applies the configuration onto that particular node and makes it stable and makes the AMI. Okay, so that's how actually we're going to approach now, right? So yeah, and Ansible is the one, so we'll go with the Ansible push and pull both. Okay, and so to start with Ansible, so we are going to start with some inventory, and before to that, even like to start with installation, and then we'll proceed. Okay, so and so the version again versions. So now currently there is a 2.10 version, I think, or even might be 2.11 also came in. I'm not sure, but yeah. So there is Ansible always, almost every 5 versions they're taking a major shift. So Ansible 2 version is a major shift. It's almost like 3-4 different years difference. 3-4 years back you got so second version, so or even more than that if I'm not wrong. So but 2 version is a major shift. 1 version was something. Okay, so and after that 2 is a major shift. There's a major change on the 2 version. After 2 version 2.5 they came up with some major changes. Okay, and now 2.10 also they impose a lot of changes. Okay, and we'll try to install Ansible. If it is coming 2.10 version, our approach of the code is going to be a little bit different. And if it is 2.9 it is installing by default in the operating system, then yeah, it's going to be a different approach. Let's see so what it comes basically, either 2.9 or 2.10. What I am doing, this is what I'm telling. Okay, when it comes to the version, so 2 version is one major change, 2.5 is change. All right, so let's go and try to install the Ansible on one node and we'll see. Okay, we'll take 2 nodes technically to do the configuration and this. So what we'll do is we'll take 2 nodes. One is Ansible. Okay, so Ansible server, where you install where you run the Ansible from, and you will take 1 node or 2 nodes, your choice. one node, and always try to push it. First to start with, we will always try to push it. So that means I require two EC2 machines, right? I require two EC2 machines. I'll take two EC2 machines. One I'll call it as server, another one I'll call it as node. That's it. Okay, let's see. Okay. Let's proceed. Or I have already a workstation. I can use workstation as my Ansible server also. I can do that, right? So let me start the instance. Why do have multiple instances? I can use my workstation as well. Another instance I want, so that I'll take it as some instance. So community MI. Spot instance I'll take. Just for understanding, Ansible node 1 is not related to Ansible. It is being managed by Ansible. That's it. Okay, so now sudo yum and install Ansible. So let's find out what is the version it is picking it up. So Ansible 2.9 version, because there is a 2.10 is a mid version, and I think it is not it's not really coming up here. But anyhow, so since you are learning today, so you should definitely learn something which is really needed to which is really needed for tomorrow's thing, right? So that's where I'm thinking if you go with this one, so you definitely see some changes. So I did something and you go to the documentation, you're seeing something, it's quite little difficult as well. Okay, so let's go with 2.10 version. So how to install 2.10 version? I'm just pressing no to go with avoid this, and sudo I just go for pip. Pip is a Python module installer, and Ansible is written on Python. Pip install Ansible LQ. Okay, it's a Python module installer, and it will install Python, and the Python version is 2.10. Okay, it's installing 2.10. Latest version will come from here. Cool. And I'll go for Ansible -- version now. And you will see that Ansible 2.10.4 is a version. Okay, cool. So to start with, you have one node. Okay, now I'm going to start with the first topic, which is under Ansible is called as inventory. Okay, inventory management. when come to the inventory management, so how do you maintain your inventory? Okay, inventory is nothing. So the list of servers, so which is being managed by Ansible. So those particular list of them should be, those lists should be provided through a file, and that file is called as inventory file. Okay, so inventory. So how do you do that? Okay, inventory is nothing but it's a file. Okay, it's a file, it's a text file, it's a text file where you give the list of servers. Now, like let's say I have certain servers in organization, so usually we'll be having servers, so given in a proper structure, something like that. Structure in the sense naming convention also. Like let's say, let's say my project is inside Amazon, and if I want to take care of so having a list of servers, so then generally we can have the host name of the machines also properly configured, and that particular host names can be this way also, right? So like let's say, I have two regions. Like let's say, so I'm going to go with my whole project actually is going to be is US East. Okay, is US East 1. I'm going to use one region. Like let's say, and AP South 1 is another region I'm using. Okay, so which is, this is Indian, this is USA, and this is India. Okay, two regions in Amazon I'm going to use, and I'm having two regions, let's say in AWS, and I'm using that. Now, how do I put my servers? Basically, like let's say, you can put like so you will have some so some naming convention. So like let's say, so US East, you can call it as a 3-word convention. You can go with this one, or else you can go with US-E1, something like that. You can do that. So the naming convention organizations will usually have some naming convention standard. Okay, so like let's say you have some data center, like let's say you have some data center in so India, and your own data centers. You have some data center in USA, and so you have some data center in so some probably in some in somewhere in Middle East, basically. Like let's say, like let's say some some region, like let's say Dubai. Okay, so you have something here. All right, so then okay, so then how do you put your how do you do data center, and how do you structure that? So let's say I'll go with IND, a 3-word convention. I'll make it USA and DUP, so 3-word convention, right? So then I will go with so probably you'll have one data center or two data centers, so that also something it also comes into picture. Okay, sometimes, and probably you'll be having something like so whether this is a project name, you'll have usually the project name. Okay, so because mine is a big company and I have a lot of projects running, so like let's say project 1. Okay, some project code will be there. So that also, like let's say you have some three-word convention or something like that. So then 3 words also will be there for that. Okay, like let's say let's say this is a something like retail project. So like let's say retail project. Okay, or like let's say insurance project, INS. Okay, something like that. Okay, it's really not really related. Some usually will be having the project codes, small codes will be having in organization, and like let's say, and a hyphen, whether it is an app server or whether it is a web server. Okay, and web server 1, web server 2, like that. Here also you'll have some standard naming convention generally. Okay, so like this, if it is your own data center. When it comes to the cloud, okay, so some people, what they do is they follow the same standards. So they follow the same legacy standards here even, and they will define, they'll always create a DNS records. They'll always create a DNS records, and the DNS records will always go with some naming standard. So now if it is a US East 1 and AP South 1, so then I can go with US East 1. So like let's say US-East 1 hyphen. So the project is RoboShop. I'll say RS, RoboShop project, and and the component is like let's say front end and hyphen front end hyphen so whether it's an app server, so I'll say app, and it's an environment. Basically, it's gonna be so environment is actually going to be it's actually so Dev environment. So then Dev 1. So it can dev1, dev2 machines like that. Okay, so you can just go for us-east1-RoboShop. Even you can go for small characters in general usually. So fe-app-dev-2 machine. Okay, web or something like that, So fe is an app, frontend is an app you are putting, and like let's say let's say you have some database machine, so rs hyphen, so frontend has some database db hyphen dev hyphen 1. Okay, so you can just go with this naming convention, or you don't want this much. Basically, your project itself is a single project, so then you can go for so us RoboShop. Okay, or you don't need to specify RoboShop because you have single thing. So yeah, I mean you say us hyphen frontend hyphen app hyphen dev hyphen 1. So yeah, so that's it. You can kind of come up with a short name, and it's up to you how do you come up. Okay, organization will have some standards, and you'll go with that. So now this is the host name, which is nothing but the DNS name, here. Okay, DNS name, which actually resolves an IP address in the backend, and you know that, right? And this can be kept an IP address also. If you go with the cloud world, okay, so this is, you can call it as a kind of a static config. Okay, so this kind of a static config, static inventory. So if it is a static inventory, you'll have the proper names and you make them. Okay, but actually in the cloud, okay, I make a lot of so servers all the time, and I delete servers all the time. And in the cloud inventory, okay, cloud inventory actually cannot be static. Okay, so cannot be static, so it has to be dynamic. It has to be dynamic. So that's where this inventory is always made dynamically. Okay, so either you use Ansible scripts to make it dynamically. Ansible provides some scripts, especially only for Amazon only. For other clouds, it doesn't support, and even it doesn't really need it because rather than taking their script and customizing it, it's a big headache. You can write your own script too, or you can make your own script. You make your own script and make inventory. You make inventory file. You kind of write your own script to make your inventory file. That's the idea. All right. So yeah, and you always try to grab the dynamic inventory and you try to run the things usually. All right. So that's how. And so this inventory is needed for push mechanism. Okay. Pull doesn't need. Whereas on the other side, pull does not need inventory. Pull doesn't need inventory, right? So the server itself is pulling the configuration. You don't really require an inventory file for that. Okay. So that's the idea about that. And when it comes to the inventory file, inventory is a text file, and where you keep the, either you can give the host name or you can give the IP address. Anything you can give. You can give any. Need not necessarily to be the host name. You can give the IP address also. So yeah, while you are making your script to make the inventory file, either you can make it within host name or you can go with the IP address also, is up to you. And how do you do that is your choice basically. Okay, so that's the whole idea. And so the inventory file is a simple text file. And there is Ansible best practices. Okay, I'll show you the Ansible documentation as well. So Ansible best practices. Ansible best practices tell that so you maintain dev as a separate inventory file, prod as a separate inventory file. So dev-inventory, prod-inventory. Okay, so you try to maintain a simple file. So don't try to make it complex, keep everything in one place. So that's what even Ansible tells as a best practice, and we're just going to adopt the same thing as well. Okay, and we don't require much of the inventory. Why? Because as I mentioned, so we don't usually go with push mechanism because we are following the immutable structure, and so that's where we go with the pull. But I would like to show you both as well. Okay, so first I'll show you the immutability. So I'll take a single server or two servers, and Okay, kind of initially run the things, and then probably we think about the full. I mean, the whole. When I talk about when I talk about the whole CI/CD, I'll talk about the right practice. But initially, let's make it push, and let's talk about how do you make inventory and how do you push the things. Let's see them. Okay. So first thing first. So I will tell you the best practices Ansible. The Ansible itself is give you the best practices documentation. And if you go into the documentation, so what one of the thing is, so inventory file for production servers, inventory file for staging environment. Probably if you have more environments, you can put the appropriate environment file. I mean, don't actually try to keep everything in one file. So that's the whole idea, and that's generally is a code standard as well. Don't keep your code wet. Always try to keep your code dry. So try to make small files basically. Okay, makes your operations much easier sometimes. Okay, so that's the idea, and we're going to make the inventory file. So now I have only one node basically here. So vim inv. Okay, I have only one node, and that node either I can give the host name or IP address as we are already talking about. So here I can give the private IP address, no issues. Okay, so 7 quit. Now Ansible -playbook. Okay, oh no playbook, sorry. Ansible command and -i inventory. Is the inventory to which host you want to connect. All. What is this all? I'll come to that in a minute. So all, and what you want to do. So Ansible is all about running some modules on the remote node. Okay, so Ansible is all about running some modules. Anything you want to do in Ansible, you have a module available. Okay, anything you want to do in Ansible, there's a module. Okay, so Ansible module index. You go there and you'll find out a very big list of Ansible modules. Okay, even you're seeing the latest version. You're seeing the older version of Ansible documentation, and you need to see the latest version. If you go there, I think the things are changed now. Okay, so they're not calling now it as a modules. They're calling it as collection index. Previously it's called a module index. Now it's calling it as collection index. Okay, so previously until 2.9 version we called it as a module. Now we are calling it as collection. Okay, there's a slight difference happening. That's a problem. Okay, and yeah, and these are the different collections they're making it. All right, so now let's say you have Ansible built-in collection, and inside that you're going to have different plugins. Okay, and these plugins earlier is called as modules directly. Now they're calling it as collection and plugin. Okay, words are slightly different, but fundamentally the core concept is same. So they're trying to stabilize the product in more meaningful way. All right, so yeah, now here there is something called as setup. Okay, so setup is nothing but some gather some information about your remote node, and that's where I want to give a module name. And how you give the setup is, so you have to give Ansible dot built-in dot. If you are using 10 version, built-in dot what is that, setup. And it's asking for yes or no. You just give yes or no. So because it uses SSH in the background, and it is telling that hey, it's failing basically. Yeah, it fails. Why? Because you didn't give all the options. And so what you have to tell is you want to use a user, right? So to which user you want to connect to the remote machine. So the user is again CentOS, and the password, right? So the password, ask for the password. There's an option called as -k, and if you want to know the options, the Ansible -help will help you in finding the options. -help, you get all the options. So we didn't use capital K, we used a small k. So ask for connection password, right? So now I remove the help and it asks for the password. You give the password DevOps 321. Actually it is telling that, so use the SSH connection type with passwords. You might install a SSH pass program. Okay, it is supposed to install some program called as SSH. So sudo yum install, uses some third-party software in the backend, which is SSH pass. Just install SSH pass. Now you go with this and DevOps 321 and you give that. So it just kind of collect the information, and it actually, or like let's say a very simple one I'll go with. I will go with a very simple module, even not setup actually. Don't collect any information. Just check the ping status. Check whether it is actually connecting to the server or not. You are able to connect to the server or not. So then you get the pong response. Okay, so this is the scenario. This is the M scenario. You are using 10 version, but whereas actually if it is a previous version, you can directly give ping. And it's a backward compatible, and for certain versions, and it works as well. Okay, for certain versions it still works, but later you cannot guarantee that it will work or it will not work. Okay, so but as of now it is working. So usually any program, overnight they'll not change, so they'll still support the some backend, they'll still support the backward compatibility, and that's where the backend versions, whatever the options are there, the new versions also it's working. Okay, but think that so from Ansible 2.10 version, okay, you have to use this approach rather than this approach. So since we are installing the latest version, so we'll go with this change. We'll go this change rather than these things all the time. Okay, and then the documentation you always find these only. And that's how we do that. Okay, cool. And now let's say this configuration management tool is all about what? This Ansible configuration management tool is all about installing some software, managing the configuration on the remote node. Is all modules on it. Like let's say I'll go with the shell module and -a, some arguments I'm trying to give, which is sudo sudo yum install, like let's say Java. Okay, I'm just trying to install. Now what you're using a shell module and executing a shell command inside that. Okay, something like that. Okay, so DevOps 321. Now it will go on try to install Java on that particular remote machine. That's it. If you want to install Nginx, install Nginx, right? And it's becoming a more or like a shell script, right? You're executing shell commands inside Ansible. That's not a great idea. Okay, that's not a great idea. And you have some 100 steps, you end up executing 100 Ansible commands. If you have 100 steps, you end up using 100 Ansible commands, shell commands. That's not a great idea. Okay, and that is where the next thing comes into picture, which is nothing but so Ansible is nothing but we talked about this Ansible push, how it is pushing now, and Ansible modules. So we just started talking about that, right? So and ultimately now we are talking about it as okay, collections now. Okay, so and so the problem with the Ansible or command is multiple tasks if you have, and there's a logical limitations. If first Ansible command, first task is a failure, I want to execute something. If it is successful, I want to do something, and you miss these two things as basically. Okay, you cannot actually provide multiple tasks here in the same one single Ansible command, and then also at the same time it will not give you some logical statements also. This is successful, do this. If it is a failure, do this. We already handled that kind of something in the shell scripting as well, right? Some conditions, isn't it? So all right, so that's how so that's how we need a better thing, and that's where something called as Ansible playbook comes into picture. And that's where Ansible playbook comes into picture. So we need to talk about Ansible playbook. And before to the playbook also, I want to talk about one more thing in SSH. So we can also use some kind of keys to connect to the remote node. Now let's say, so cat inv. So there is something in the server. So if I just try to give this, if without password also, there is an alternate way of, alternate way of authentication. Like you take your mobile, you have alternate ways to the password. You have some, what we call patterns, you have fingerprints, you have face unlock, right? You have different options. Password necessarily need not to be the same all the time. So it can be sometimes of using with some keys, but necessarily you don't think that you should be using keys or passwords. Your flexibility. But for me, at least so 70-80% of the organizations uses passwords only. Okay, rather than keys, they use passwords. Even the cloud world also. Okay, So they use, I mean, cloud by default try to give some kind of a key, that's okay. But if you customize the AMI, like how I did my AMI, you're able to log into the with the password. Organizations also does the same thing. So they keep some kind of a standard password and they always use the password to log in. If it is a key, the same key has to be shared with everyone. And end of the day, you don't know who is kind of authenticating. So there is certain operational issues with the keys. And unless until you configure the keys, each individual key for everyone, okay? So that kind of a little tricky. So otherwise, passwords is much widely used, and Ansible supports that anyhow. So as of now, actually, it is prompting for the password. If you don't want to prompt the password, so then what you can do is what you can do is you have some shell environment variables, and if you give those variables, just fix that particular it just picks that particular so password from the variable. For an example, Ansible export Ansible and Ansible underscore password is equal to DevOps 321, something like this. Now if I just go and give install Java, so it's still asking for the password. Ansible underscore what is that? Ansible password shell variable. Okay, so it can be passed as something like an extra variables, but there are some shell variables also, if I am not wrong. Okay, so what you can do is you can just use this option at least. Okay, so there is some extra variables which you can pass -e, and what you can do is also Ansible underscore password is equal to this one. You just give this, then what happens is DevOps 321, or in fact, actually earlier one might be already working. So you have -k option. It is asking for the, you tell that you ask for the password. Okay, so now I didn't give that, it's not connecting. Okay, so -e, so which is Ansible underscore password is equal to DevOps 321. So now it actually connects without any kind of password. Okay, so password can be so pass through some option or pass through some parameter or some way. So you can still run Ansible, okay, without prompting the password also. Okay, it's up to you how do you do that. But since as a chance came, I want to talk about the keys option also, because a lot of people who knows already the cloud, they know the only the keys approach. Okay, so right, so I mean, in the very first sessions itself, they might have wondered, so how this guy is actually using the passwords, right? So because I learned all the time using keys. Okay, so some questions will be there. Okay, at least I know some people already spoke to me on this the same. Okay, so yeah, let's see how these keys works. As I mentioned, it's simply like your mobile, a machine you understand as a mobile. You have different authentication mechanisms. You have different authentication mechanisms. So, and set username password is one way, and set user key is another way. Okay, so let's talk about some keys. Any questions before? Okay, cool. And the next thing is keys. Now key is a pair here. Okay, your keys is pair basically. Right? Your keys is pair, isn't it? Key and lock, those are pair. Okay, so it's always a pair, isn't it? So this is one, and the key is open. You don't expect like so one key you keep it on you don't have any kind of a universal lock, a universal key, right? So kind of you open any key, you open any key with it. I mean, you open any lock with one key. It doesn't make sense. Okay, the manufacturer strictly try to make a key pair. Okay, so one will not work with everything, isn't it? So the same way, SSH also works with the pair basically. Okay, it works on the pair, and it's kind of a software world. You generate kind of two files here. Okay, you deal with two files. One you call as public, one you call as private. And you just understand this lock and key also. Lock is public, key is private. Key always you keep it secret. Lock can be open, lock can be public, right? It can be seen by anyone, but whoever has the key, they can only open it. Okay, so key is a private one and public key you have. So as such also key pair. So you call it as public key and private key. Private is the one which is used to authenticate. Public key is the one where you want to get authenticate, you keep it out there. Okay, now I'll generate my key pair. So how do you generate your key pair? So SSH-keygen, SSH-keygen, and -f DevOps. So in my workstation, okay, you're doing this. And so SSH-keygen -f DevOps, and passphrase, you want to give some password. No, I don't want to give, empty, enter. Now it kind of generate two files. One is DevOps.pub file and DevOps file. So DevOps is a private key and DevOps.pub is a public key. Now wherever I want to connect, I will go to that particular node and I'll keep this particular pub file. So I will just go with the second node where I want to connect, this Ansible node 1. So I'll just connect to the system. Now I want to connect to the system. So what I have to do is I have to create a directory mkdir and -p. These are the steps. .ssh is the directory you have to create, and the chmod, the permissions of that particular directory has to be 700. Okay, or what you have to do is ugo minus rw, or not ugo, group and others minus rwx of .ssh, and so u plus rwx. So okay, so that means user you give all permissions, group and others you remove the permissions. Okay, or else which is an equivalent is 700. That's okay, and so this is fine. And you go into .ssh, and so usually you don't file this file if it's a new machine, but in the cloud actually it is trying to create an authorized key is already there. So what I have to do is I will just try to create a file which is authorized keys. If it is not there, there's already some junk key, and so I want to add my another key here. So what is the key here you have is DevOps.pub file. You just take this key, okay, do this, and now you go and connect to this particular machine. So this machine by using SSH, so it should not ask for the password, but still it is asking for the password. Why it is not? Why it is still asking for the password? Because you have to tell to exclusively to SSH, hey SSH, use this. I have a key. Try this key. Okay. So then SSH is going to take this key and try to connect. So now it can connect without any password. Is it? So you see this? If I try to give this, it's actually connecting without any kind of a password. That's the idea. Okay. So now once you generated this particular key pair, you can keep this particular key pair safely with you, and you can generate this key pair with what we call git bash in your local desktop. Also we install one tool, git bash, right? In the very starting, you can use that tool also. You can generate this particular file, ssh-keygen, ssh-keygen, and -f, whatever the file names you want. Actually, you can give that particular file names. I give DevOps, okay, or you want to keep your name, my name, Prabhu. Okay, like this, these files will be generated, and these files can be kept with you with a lifelong. Okay, you can go with any organization, you can use the same key pair. Okay, you keep your private key and public key with you, and you can connect. Okay, so that's the idea. That is the idea. And now the same thing I can do with the cloud also. So cloud also, what I have done, I created .ssh directory, I created authorized keys, I kept the file inside that, I can authenticate to that, right? Now what I can do is I can just go and tell to the cloud that, hey cloud, can you put this particular, so public key to all my machines which get created? So then cloud does that. That's it, nothing more than that. So you take this public key, you copy the public key, you go to the key pair, and so it's not a create a key pair. It's actually you have something called as import a key pair, and just put this. I'm calling it as something like a DevOps and import key pair. That's it. Now any machine which will get launched, you just choose this particular key pair, and that key pair will, public key will be copied automatically to the server, and you can you can log in, or let me just action instance settings. Launch more like this, I'll just mention, and every option is chosen. But at the end, actually, now you try to go with the launch. It is having a key pair. Just choose that, launch instances, and that's it. Now this instance is coming up, and while the instance is actually coming up, it actually, so Amazon will try to put that particular file into that particular, so into that particular, the key into that particular file. Now you'll be able to, once the machine comes up, you'll be able to log into that particular key pair automatically. That's it. But actually, yeah, so if you do from Amazon, it's actually a reverse engineering. You do follow the reverse steps. Okay, so you generate the key pair directly from Amazon, and yeah, use the key pair. Only the private key will be having with you. You will not have the public key. But this is the right approach. Okay, I did it. So now I'll just take this particular IP address and the same SSH. Now with the new machine IP address, this is the machine IP address. The machine is still coming up. Yeah. Yes. So you're able to log into the new machine without any password. Now you can tell to your Ansible that, hey, Ansible, you use this particular key pair also. You just go with, you don't need to give this password. It failed, right? Now I can go and say that, hey, hey Ansible, and -private -key is equal to /DevOps. That's it. You're giving the key pair /DevOps means in the local location I have DevOps file. Use that file. That's it. Okay, but what you have to do is you have to generate one key pair and keep that particular key pair safe with you. You can use it lifelong actually. Okay, and yeah, all the time with you. You can use it. So that's how the key pair works. Any questions on this? Cool. And so now coming back to the point, so points basically. So let's come back to the points. The points is we have certain problems here. So we cannot run multiple tasks with Ansible command CLI, and you also have some logical limitations, and these can be addressed through something called as Ansible playbook. Okay, Ansible playbook is a file, okay, where Ansible can understand, and you're going to pass a set of instructions to Ansible in a YAML file format, and it will work. So if I talk about the YAML, I always talk about if I talk about YAML, I always talk about a bank example. Okay, when you go with a bank, when you go to a bank, what happens? So you'll find out a deposit form, something like this. As a simple screenshot is given, right? You'll find out a some deposit form. So then you take that particular deposit form and fill all the details and give it to the cashier sitting out there, and he will read the information and he will process your request, isn't it? That's simple. That's a simple markup language. Now, what is a markup language there? So here is a template is a markup language here. So this form is a markup language. Assume the same case with the white paper. Okay, you go to every bank, there's a white paper. You think about the probabilities. I'll write my whole name in a block letters. Okay, so and I expect that I expect the cashier to understand me, and okay, and if he says where is account number, my UI will be hurted, right? You don't remember me, I'm your valued customer. Okay, all these things come into picture, right? So there is no proper standard there. So some people give names, some people give only the account number, not name. Some people didn't mention about the denomination, how much they want to deposit. Okay, so a lot of problems are there. Okay, but understand how that particular form is solving a lot of problems there. There's no probability. There's only one probability. One probability is the information should be provided and the information will be processed. That's it. Okay, so there's the only probability. Okay, there is no scenarios of multiple if you have went with a form properly, right? So that's a simple thing which you have. So now there are two. There are two programs basically. One program actually want to share with the data to another program. Okay, so those are two different technologies, and they need a common platform to share the things, and that's where this markup language come into picture. And the same thing comes with the a program to the human also. I'm a human being, and there's a program Ansible or any other program. I want to provide the input, but we both has to be in some standard platform where both can understand. That's where the markup language come into picture and solves our problem. What is markup language? A bank form. A bank form is having what? They're having some kind of a key and you're expecting some value inside that. Like name is a key, expecting my name. Account number is a key, expecting my account number. And so something like, so signature is a key, expecting my signature, something like that, right? So the same way, so here also markup languages will be having some keys and words. That's it. How do you process them? And you have different markup languages there, XML, JSON, and JSON. Okay, XML, JSON, and YAML. So you take any markup language, so generally you will be having like, key value, which is generally a plain one. And key can have multiple values also sometimes. Key can have multiple values. Okay, so and the key again have a keys and values also. Key again have a keys and values. So this is the different things which you are going to have in any markup language. Okay, a single key is going to have a single value. Like let's say you take account number is always one, but you go with the mobile numbers, you can have multiple mobile numbers, right? The mobile numbers you can add multiple also. All right, and you go with a key, so like let's say denomination is a key, and inside that hundreds, 10, thousands, two, like that you can specify, right? A key and a value again will come into picture, something like that. Okay, so yeah, in markup language, you just do this. I think I have given some example here, so which I want to use my course approach. So course name is DevOps and trainer name is Raghu, but the timings I have two timings basically. So timing is 6 a.m. I have, 7:30 a.m. I have, right? And so the topics I teach is different topics basically. On topics on AWS I teach EC2 and S3, something like that. On DevOps I'm teaching Ansible. Now you just try to understand the topics is a key, and inside that again you have key and value or values, doesn't really matter. Okay, key and the value. Okay, this is the extensible markup language, basically XML. But XML is something, so it's a bit difficult. Is a kind of a old technology, old markup language. So that's why people are not much in the modern applications. People are not really fan of using XML, and it's a burden basically. You need to write this. There is something called as these keywords is also called as something. Okay, so yeah, you need to write that particular complete element. Okay, so start tag, end tag, element. A lot of technology words come around XML. It's a bit difficult, and that's where the Java community came up with something. Okay, JavaScript object notation. This is this is Java based community came up with this particular one, and here it is simple course name DevOps, but you have to start in braces and the braces, and you have to give all in quotes, comma. Quotes is very quite quotes is quite important. You have to do this, all these things you will be specifying the same information, but it will little bit minimized your effort, the timings, and in the square bracket you write the list, basically flower basis you can write the map. So something like this, it is actually given. Okay, JavaScript object notation. But this also has some problem. What is the problem? This comma, if I miss somewhere, the JSON will not run. Okay, anywhere your braces has been not closed properly, you're done, you're screwed. And that's where to to save the things, the YAML came into picture here. Yet another markup language, so it's yet another one, and this actually solving what problems, so all those commas, braces, things like that is solving. And here the only thing is indentation. So now you give key colon value, very simple, right? Course name DevOps, title name, okay. And always uses uniform spacing. Okay, so so uniform spacing in the sense now timing is the one. There's no braces. Okay, so there is no start tag end tag like XML, but how these two values will be considered as a part of timings. So here there is some spacing, right? Before this hyphen, there is some spacing. That spacing is really important. And so the tab spaces are not allowed. So so the indentation is really mandatory. So YAML is the one. Okay, so indentation for YAML, indentation is the one. So here you call it as a two spaces, right? So these two spaces are it can be a 2 space, 1 space, 3 space, 4 space, 10 space, doesn't really matter. And okay, but always maintain uniform spacing. You use 2 spaces, maintain everywhere 2 spaces. You want to use 3 spaces, everywhere use 3 spaces. Okay, so try to maintain the uniformity to avoid the complexity. And and the tab space are not allowed. This is a quite important thing. You cannot use tab spaces in YAML. And your editors are smart, basically. Your editors are smart, and editors will understand that's an YAML file, and automatically it will not allow you any tab spaces. Even you press tab space, they will try to kind of replace your tab space with some 2 spaces, 3 spaces as defined in the configuration. Okay, so anyway, it goes the same way. And based on the tab spaces, based on the program you're dealing, keys are provided by the program, and we have to fill those values as per our requirement, of course. Based on the program you're dealing with, Ansible will come up with their own keys, and you have to provide those values to that. Okay, so that's it. And some cases we create our own keys, mainly like variables. We can create our own keys also, like most of the scenarios it can be like variables. You give a equal to 10. A is your keyword, right? It's not given by any programming. It's your key, you are using it. Okay, or something like that. Okay, this is the basic idea. So YAML is very simple thing. It's a 2-minute thing. You will understand YAML. A key colon value. That's it. And if a key is having multiple values, you can give it with so in the next line followed with 2 spaces and give the multiple values. And it's a map. Map is nothing but key is having again key and value. Key is having again key and value. Topics is having again AWS, and AWS is having a value here, right? So that's how this is called as a map. This has a list. This has a plain key value. The only 3 things which you have in YAML, and apart from that, so however you want to put your input, you provide that particular way. That's it. Nothing more than that. Okay. Clear? Any questions?
So how is that DevOps colon? Is that the part of topics?
Yeah, it's a topics. Topics in subkey is nothing but DevOps.
So that's another way to notate, like instead
it's
of
not another way.
Oh.
Yeah, complete your question. Sorry.
Yeah. So what I meant was like, could I do the DevOps colon and then return and then hyphen Ansible, just the way that AWS has that.
No, AWS is okay. So yeah, you can do that. I just want to mention that so 2 ways you can do that. Either you can use spaces and then yeah, good catch. I think I didn't mention this point. So here I mean to say, like either you can use the indentation and do that, or else you can put the flower braces, square brackets, and you can give the list as well. Okay, so either you can give it those values in the single line, or you can give it in multiple lines. It's up to you. How do you do that? Ansible supports both. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
And here also, like, so topics actually is a map and given in multiple lines, or you can give it in a single line also by using flower braces. A map. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone? Any other questions? Okay. So just before so closing the today's session, basically, so I want to write a simple playbook and I want to run something and I want to print some kind of hello world. So this is how your playbook looks like. Playbook has multiple plays. Okay, let's read through the points. Playbook has multiple plays. You can write playbook is nothing but having multiple plays. It's not a single play. You can have a multiple plays. Playbook file itself is a list. It starts with a list. Okay, don't confuse that. There is no key. Ansible still supports. Even though you don't have a key, you can start with a list also. And Ansible uses that. Okay. And the playbook should have one play at least minimum, of course. Without a single play, the file is empty. Okay. And also you should have playbook must have the information about the inventory file. Okay, so which host you want to connect, you have to provide that. Okay, and then you should have the information that it should so it should have the information that either it should load tasks or roles. So it should have the information that you are given tasks or you're given some roles. You have to have that. In general, we provide an optional key name to denote the purpose of the play. So generally we give the name keyword just to have some naming convention. Okay, this is for this purpose, this is for that particular purpose. All right. And in this example about debug is a module. Now we can call it as a collection, right? A message is a key from the debug module. Okay, message is a key from the debug collection. Now let's see this Ansible built-in, and I'll say that it's a debug. So debug, you have debug print statements. If you just click on that, and here is how it is. Okay, so ansible.builtin.debug. Previously, I used to write only debug. Now, from to the 10 version, I should be supposed to start using this. So now I just make so sample.yaml file YML or YAML. Anything is okay. So then host is all, and the tasks is going to be is. The name of the task is going to be print hello. And how do I print? So what is the collection name or the module name? Now you're calling it as collection. Okay. So and collection I'm using message. But how do I come to know this message is the one I have to use? If you come down to the collection, okay, you'll find out what all the parameters you can use. Okay, and those values. All right. So default value. So message is I'm going to say that so hello. That's it. And save and quit. Now this hello should be printed on the remote node through the remote node Ansible -i inventory, and so then so -u CentOS and private key is equal to /DevOps /DevOps and then sample.yml file. And what it is telling is Ansible -playbook. Sorry, not Ansible command anymore. It's actually Ansible playbook now. Now Ansible playbook is trying to run, and on the remote node actually printed hello. If you had asked to install some package, you don't have installed some package. You asked to print hello, the remote node is actually printing hello. And yeah, so that's what is a quite simple introduction to the YAML. Anyhow, we'll try to talk about this again, starting from the playbook in tomorrow's session, and we'll continue from there. But still, yeah, this is how it looks like. And yeah, that's all from my side for today. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, all right. So if no questions, we'll meet in tomorrow's session. So tomorrow we're going to start with the playbook, how to write the playbook and all. And okay, I mean some different sections inside the playbook, like how to declare variables. So the same way, like how we learn shell scripting Terraform, we'll learn Ansible also with the basics, and then we'll try to implement those things in. We'll try to implement those things in the project basically. So that's how we move on. And yeah, that's all from myself for today. See you tomorrow. Bye. Good day. Good night.